going to resume recording. There we go. Okay, so we're recording again. And again, I'm Andrew Hill. I teach philosophy at St. Philip's College. And I'm also a volunteer with the San Antonio Peace Center. And in fact, today, we have a number of people here from different constituencies. And what I'd like to do is to give some focus to our conversation today is invite Migdalia Garcia, who's with us, to talk a little bit about peace and conflict studies at Northwest Vista College. But before I hand that off, I just wanted to walk through some introductions of folks that are here today and are some of the real stakeholders in peace studies and peace and conflict here in San Antonio. And so these are at least some of the institutions and organizations that are stakeholders and are part of this conversation today. And you'll hear us talking about that. And these institutions, of course, just are made up of people. And some of the folks that are involved in this, I myself am at St. Philip's College with my colleagues Irene Young, Marie Feldmeyer, Charlie Langston. These are folks who are active and participate on behalf of St. Philip's. Migdalia, who I just mentioned, who I'm going to turn this over to in a minute, works with Neil Lewis, Julie Moore Felix, Chad Mueller, and others at Northwest Vista College, specifically in their Peace and Conflict Studies program. But we also have colleagues that work at, including my wife, Mary Lynn Gasway, at St. Mary's University. And these are folks like Terry Bogus, Aaron Tyler, Larry Hufford. These are folks that have been doing peace work for a long time and are kind of at the nexus of all these studies here in San Antonio. Those folks have all been to Northern Ireland in the Peace Center there. And the Peace Center of Corrymeela, they include folks like Derek and Dot Wilson, who have come to San Antonio and were Fulbright. Derek was a Fulbright scholar here at St. Philip's College for a year. Richard and Yvonne Naylor were also Fulbright scholars from Corrymeela and were here in San Antonio in 2016. The current leadership now, Alex Wimberly and Tim McGowan, they are the leadership of the Corrymeela Center in Northern Ireland. And I mentioned Padraig Ó Tuama as well. He's a well-known poet. He's currently the theologian in residence on Being on NPR. And he used to be the leader of Corrymeela, and this year is in New York City doing a one-year fellowship at Columbia University. But also here in San Antonio, again, in terms of the active, practical on the grounds piece, is the Rotary Club. And we've been having conversations, especially the last couple of months, with J.C. Clapsaddle, Paul Garrow, Jack McGuire, and others who are Rotarians. And they have a very strong commitment to international peace. And they do this through their network of Rotary clubs around the world. And then finally, the last group that I want to mention, and again, we've got representatives here today, is the San Antonio Peace Center. This is a all-volunteer, nonprofit organization that's been active in San Antonio for years. Some of the current volunteers include Cynthia Brown, Jackie Klotch, who of course also used to be at Northwest Vista College, Sharon Gabe, Janice Olson, Karen Weidman and her husband Keith. They're active volunteers with the Peace Center. And that leadership there includes Ann Helmke, Rosalind Collier, Susan Ives, kind of talk about as the founders, but also Karen Ball, Narjit Pierre, Brian Halderman. These again are people which for years and years have been active social activists on behalf of peace in San Antonio and have been doing incredible work. In fact, we'll see one of the annual events sponsored by the Peace Center is the Blessing of the Peacemakers. And that's coming up on January the 30th. So Sunday, we'll be having and of course, given COVID restrictions, I imagine most people will be watching online or be streamed live. The details can be found at Eventbrite or just through DreamWeek. It's an official DreamWeek event. And so that's one of the main things that they do here in San Antonio. And also one last thing I want to put in a plug for the Rotarians who I just mentioned before the Peace Center. They've also been very active. This slide is courtesy of our friend JC Clapsaddle, who was talking about all the connections that Rotary is at the center of. And they've been trying to work to provide, on a practical side, scholarships for students to study peace. That's something that they've had a commitment to as an organization for a long time. And they're going to be working more closely with the Corrymeela Peace Center this year, and then also next year, hopefully in terms of a significant peace summit, an initiative here in San Antonio. So I wanted to do those introductions of kind of the who's who for everybody. And as a way of saying, these are the folks that are part of this conversation here in San Antonio. We want to thank DreamWeek, of course, as always, for pulling us together. We did this 2 years ago and had a conversation on campus at Northwest Vista College and did that in person. Hopefully we'll be doing that again in person in the days ahead. But for now, with us limited to the Zoom call, I do want to hand this back over to Migdalia and welcome you to tell us more about you and what's happening here in San Antonio in terms of peace studies.
There we go. Thank you, Andy, and welcome everyone. I'm also going to share my screen. And I just wanted to also say as we share, as we converse, as we go into this inquiry together, you will have an opportunity to say who you are and what your organization's with. If you would also like to do that in the chat, your name and the organization, that would be great too. So welcome. It's delightful to see so many friends. I'm going to share my screen for one moment so that I can just really have us focus on one slide. And that's this. So Neil's going to talk about the context of our Peace and Conflict Studies program at NVC and give an anecdote about one of our students. What I wanted to do, y'all, was really frame and ground our work and what it means to be a community college. So there is a wonderful article that I've shared with a lot of you about the impetus of a community college, that a community college came to be as its mission to democratize education. And I think that's huge. That is the work of peace, to give access to people, to groups who had been historically disadvantaged, historically marginalized, who have a lot of gifts and voice and talent, and make our community beautiful and diverse and inclusive, and to say there is a place for you here. We are open access, we give opportunities, and we want to be a hub. We want to be a place where people feel welcome. And we have a lot to do. So I say it's both one of our assets that we're a community college, and it's also a huge responsibility that we're a community college. So it's no small feat to democratize education, and that was really the driving. I was going to say, of course, this is a conversation about peace, not using words like that. It really the founding energy to say, we're here for you. We want all people to come. With that came the vision of, well, we say that, what does that mean in a practical sense? How are we inviting, how are we inclusive of these people and communities we say that we serve? So for us at Northwest Vista College, that manifested through our Peace and Conflict Studies program. So Neil, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, I just want to give, for folks that don't know, we have, it's not technically a program because due to the state of Texas, we can't call it that. They have very specific designations and definitions of what is a program. But we have one of the unique, I think, if we're going to call it, I'll just call it program for now, a unique program that we have for community college. And I don't want to get too much into details because we don't have time of what that means, but we have a Peace and Conflict introductory course, and then we have a Peace and Conflict emphasis that it's a transcript designation that students can get on their transcript. And one of the things that I just wanted to kind of mirror what Mig was saying was that one of our goals as we teach both the introductory introduction to peace and conflict studies course, but also our faculty that teach peace and conflict emphasis courses, is not just this kind of academic, peace as this thing that happens out there, but peace that happens here. And we really want to build skill sets for students to have an impact in their life at home, at work, wherever they may be. So we don't see it as something kind of pie in the sky, unrealistic, but something that is something anybody can do and everyone can do, and give them very practical skills. One quick story, I have a student that she took me for Introduction to Humanities 1, which is also a Peace and Conflict Emphasis course. And she ended up taking me for 1302, which is our introductory course. And she found herself working at a mental health clinic here in town. And she came back, I'd see her in the hallway and I'd say hello to her. And she came into my office and she said, I don't forget what we talked about in 1302, that those skills were very crucial to her in terms of de-escalation, in terms of understanding trauma, where people come from and what people have experienced. And I've had students, just last semester, I had a student tell me, I love this class because I've been using some of the things we've talked about in class as a father. And it's something I think that what Meg was saying, very grounded, and a responsibility that we have, that peace education isn't just a great thing to learn about, but also it has that advantage of being able to be instantly useful for students in their lives. And so we're really excited about the possibilities. Meg, I didn't know if you wanted to talk about the San Antonio Peace Center in Northwest Vista next, or if we wanted to go right into those questions, but I'll hand it over back to you.
Sure. Thanks, Neil. What I'd like to do is open up the conversation, and as it comes up organically, I think that we discuss it maybe in our close. But what I love about all being together is that we are change makers, and that's what we try to inculcate to our students, that we have influence, that we have power, and that it's very practical, and that peace really starts with ourselves and how we impact and see the world with different lenses, through the lens of compassion, through the lens of peace. These are skills that can be practiced and taught and strengthened, and it's really a very joyous opportunity for them to be able to make their way through the world with this sense of impacting change and helping our communities flourish. So with that, this will stop. Yes, we want to do that. So with that, I'd like to invite us to a conversation, and I want it to be organic, and I've also created some questions that I think would help us spur our conversation. So we're talking about peace. So peace, broad sense, San Antonio, peace, broad sense, in our community. And also specifically, if we could dream together, which is what we're doing now, key ingredients for what a peace education would look like. What is it comprised of? What would be, and again, this is from your vantage point, the communities that you influence, what is that key ingredient that you think is a must for a peace education, or something that has really motivated you and you think this would be wonderful, it was part of the curriculum or part of the practice? And I'll put that question in the chat. So I'll open it up, y'all.
I think what's been so important for me, maybe initially, is the recognition of that these are basic human skills, right? And neuroscience confirms that's now in our DNA. And with the help of neurogenesis, we can all, no matter what age we're in, we can evolve, if you will. If we didn't learn these skills, they can become a part of us anyway. But the whole thing about, the practice and the becoming starts with me, and then is extended to others. But I think in terms of, I'm not going to say but, both and what I've learned more recently in my life is the whole systems approach to that. When I think about us as community, as a world, you know, to be hard on systems, but soft on people. How are we able to actually look at ourselves, whatever that might be, our healthcare system to our family system? Is there, and there are, compassionate ways to look at those structures and say, and tweak those with the things that we do know, those compassion skills that work towards peace. So I think those, especially for me, the systems, but it all goes hand in hand. We have never, I think, in terms of compassion skills, at least, it tends to always focus on self and others. But I think where we get the traction is systemic.
Beautiful. Thank you, Anne. Other thoughts?
You know, one of the thoughts that I had, you know, when I think about a key ingredient of peace education is, like so many other things, just the value of self-reflection and so inner reflection, and how vital that is on so many different levels.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Edwin. Deep inquiry. I like it. I see people are putting things in the chat too. Eric, please.
Yeah, thank you, Migdalia. I think about, you know, truth telling and reconciliation as, I think, important things to discuss. And, you know, Anne was talking about the inward and then looking to the interpersonal. When you said interpersonal, I thought right away of the idea of truth telling and reconciliation and that healing process that's absolutely vital and important to this work.
Yeah, beautiful. Yes, it's hard work. It's hard work. The undoing is hard work. The redoing and relearning. Absolutely. Thank you.
Just to follow up on that, I think building on the concept of reconciliation, I definitely think that reformative justice has a place in skills that students could learn in terms of peacekeeping and conflict. If people can see that maybe some harm has been done and there needs to be some kind of responsibility taken for that as a first step on the part of the person that may have committed a fault or a serious injury to someone else, and to recognize that there needs to be restoration of the relationship, which calls into mind people taking responsibility for their actions, seeking forgiveness, and maybe the ability to give forgiveness on the side of the person being offended.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. We had a faculty member who was asking about how do we make our processes that we have through HR, through the student conduct, how do we make those restorative practices versus punitive? So I love that, Arnold. Thank you. Some people are writing in the chat. So Julie says a combination of deep inner work and action in one's community. Yes, Julie, yes. Communication skills, restorative mindsets, and collective community building. Yes, all wonderful things. Can you say a little more, Kathleen, about the communication skills? Is there one, or there a set? What were you thinking?
I was more thinking along the lines of more generally being able to present ideas and to effectively communicate with another person, kind of on every level. What I'm hearing, I think, are all of these different things that require useful and helpful communication. And if we can't both speak and listen in our communication, then it gets lost. And so I think that being sure that we can communicate effectively is really important to peace and conflict resolution.
Absolutely, yes. Andy, when Kathleen said that, I thought of the program that you have about deep listening and dialogue.
Yeah, we actually have we're part of a partnership at St. Philip's College with 4 other colleges and universities where we're talking to our students in small groups. We have 8 from St. Philip's about how to have difficult conversations in a highly polarized atmosphere. How do we teach our students to engage in productive civil conversation across really deep ideological divides? Because that's one of the challenges we have now as, as citizens in our democracy, which is to find ways to maintain civility and a sense of shared responsibility for our communities. It's related to the peace studies piece in that there's an amazing number of people right now in our country. I was looking at some polling data recently who fear that there'll be a civil war in the near future. And the fact that we're even polling about this and that significant numbers of Americans, millions, are saying that it's something that they see as foreseeable in the near future. And that's a sign of the stress our democracy has been under the past few years. In this particular program, which is called the Intercollegiate Civil Disagreement Partnership, it's designed to help our students get the skills they need to sponsor public conversations, even about very difficult topics, and hopefully help keep our community lashed together as we go through difficult times.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah. Other ideas about the key ingredient or an ingredient might be the key ingredient that you feel is necessary for peace education. And that doesn't just mean in the formal sense, y'all. We're a community college. So how do we, as lifelong learners, apply this concept of peace education? And what are some, what's an ingredient? What do we see as a key, a viable piece that could help us thrive as a community?
Migdalia, one of the things in one of my classes, we do controversial topics, and the students have to research and talk about it. But one of the things that I always talk to them about, especially when it's a volatile, issue, that they really need to try to see through the lens of the other person, because sometimes when it's something that we disagree with so much, we become blind to their viewpoint because it seems absurd to us. But I think that we should, in showing empathy, try to view things, even though it may seem ludicrous, but try to view so that we better understand them, and then work, for them to understand the other side also. We try to talk about seeing things through another lens, not just our own. I think that's an important skill that we should work on as, with our students.
Yeah, that's wonderful, Diana. Yep, that perspective taking. And I like the experiential side of that as well. That's wonderful. Great pedagogy. Okay, so people are just commenting in the chat. Yep, democratized education is one of the components, yes. And so that's why, Eric is here and Janie is here, and there really are leaders and pioneers and in some of the things that we would like to hold the colleges compassionately accountable for. How are we engaging in diversity, equity, and inclusion? What does that look like? That's the work of peace. What does that look like? So I think that our democratized education is compassionate accountability for people who have, again, been underserved, have been marginalized, not included. So yes, thanks.
I think also kind of what I'm working on incorporating more in my classes is like a strengths-based approach to empowering students to help them see that they can make a difference, that they already have skills and we can build on those, whether, you know, and there are different degrees of being involved. And, you know, whether it's just news literacy and being able to read the news in a productive way, all the way to, you know, running for office. You know, I always have one student who aspires to that, and there's so much in between. So that's something I'm working on.
Yeah, I love that, Dina. I love that. Meeting students where they're at, and the strength-based, they already have skills, they already have knowledge. How do we encourage, stimulate? Yeah, super great. I'll turn it over to Neil for the next question if we don't have any more insights on that one. Thank you, y'all.
It's great. I've got another question. I'm going to also with a series of questions, but they're interconnected. And I'm going to put that in the chat also so that you don't have to just hear it. So from your vantage point, and that's the thing, Meg and I and Andy were so excited about having different people come in here, you know, not just people that not just people that teach college, but from your vantage point, what are the peace priorities of the city of San Antonio? How can we best create experiential activities, and what are possible synergistic opportunities? So that moving from how could we apply this? How could we find the best ways of what should be our priorities, and how do we get students and people that be involved in peace education to see those opportunities, see those connections? We don't have to tackle all of that all at once. We could start with peace priorities, since it is there's a lot there.
Well, one thing I would mention that I like about the history of the Peace Center is that, and Susan, I see y'all are here. I would love for you to talk about this, which is part of what sparked it was gang violence in the 1990s. There's no more a local issue than that. And it was something needed to be done. And Anne and Rosalind and others came together to say, look, let's organize a gang summit. And they actually had to talk the mayor into coming and getting other civic city leaders involved, but they did. And what I like about it is that it's been rooted in what are the needs of the community and responding to them. And they've been doing that for 25 years since then. And so in terms of this ongoing process, and Neil and Mig saying, what are our issues? This is what the Peace Center's been doing for a long time. So I just wanted to kind of frame the question with that history.
Yeah, Andy.
Oh, go ahead, Meg.
I was gonna just mention, and Anne had sent out, if you all were part of a symposium, the mayor talked about community health as one of his big priorities. And I think that's really huge, because it wasn't, you know, mental health is a piece of that, thriving communities, DEI is the piece of that, good communication, good teaching, democratized education. It's part of that vision of what a healthy community looks like, community health. And yeah, like Ann said, from birth to, you know, it's the life cycle. It's a life circle. So yes.
Yeah, I was just going to add just what, in case people are not reading it in the chat, Arnold said domestic violence. So that's something students can approach in terms of dating violence. Julie mentioned mental health as one of the key issues. Diana just said homeless. Compassion on a localized community scale. This is Ann. Closer to the ground with education from birth to life's passing, taking action in geographic proximity, connecting among and across societal sectors, celebrate and enjoy community. That's good off the top of your head, Ann. I like that. Other peace priorities of San Antonio. These are all great.
I was going to say, I'm Susan from the Peace Center, that I think one thing that I can see a need for is a way for us as a community to talk about things without becoming defensive about them, to be able to set mutual goals, to be able to find things that aren't operating the way that they should have. I'm thinking specifically maybe this time of year of the bad weather we had last February and the little shortfalls that left our most vulnerable people hurting. Old people in high-rise apartments without electricity, without water, and it just taking days and days and days to get any services to them. So how can we talk about these things and address these things without becoming defensive about our role in them and our failures, and open up those channels of communication and figure out how to do that? It's something I think I'd really like to see as a way of peacemaking, that us being able to work together on these kinds of things.
That's great. I love it. I was having a conversation, Susan, with myself this morning about that very thing. How do I send an email with compassionate accountability, and how do I address this without being defensive myself and then creating defensiveness on the other side? And I'm still working through it. Still working through
Hard.
it.
It's hard.
It's hard. It hasn't been sent yet.
I'd like to speak a little bit to the experiential learning piece that Neil posed to us. And I'll talk about that just from, where I'm working, the site that I'm working from, which is the Alamo Colleges at Northwest Vista College. We already have in place a system of experiential learning that's transcripted. Students are invited to a series of wide variety of events and activities that they can select from, and those count as experiential learning, activities, I guess. And I right now it's really quite decentralized, at least at our college. It's, a lot of folks in different academic areas presenting opportunities, from attending a speaker event or participating in some kind of project. But I think there's an opportunity to make it more intentional. And I'm imagining a scenario at our college where, let's say we have a central issue that's a focus, and that experiential learning activities related to that, let's say if it's mental health, for instance, or homelessness, that for that period of time, there could be a series of things that students could participate in related to that might culminate in some kind of community action project that they could demonstrate later on. That could be in a portfolio, for instance, that they could show. The benefit, of course, is all the wonderful things in the work that we're all committed to. But on the practical side for the students, this is an artifact of the work they've accomplished that demonstrates their ability to employ all these skills that we're trying to teach them to future employers or other institutions of higher education that they might be applying to. So that's kind of what I'm thinking in terms of experiential learning, is if it could be a partnership between the community college and certain partners out in the community, all committed to a central theme or project. That's what I'm thinking.
It's a great suggestion, Julie. Wonderful idea.
Yes, so anyone to add to that for the, I mean, if you have a peace priority, of course, we can go back to that. But to that second part of the question, creating experiential activities, possible opportunities that we might have. I like the idea of having a theme, Julie, because begins to create its own ideas, right? Once we have the theme, then you can find partnerships that maybe make sense. But anyone else? These are all great.
Well, and I'm looking at the screen, I'm looking around at the screen, and we have so many great partners already. So thinking about the synergy that could exist between where you are and what you're doing and the community college and the Peace Center. You know, I'm looking at Edwin, I'm looking at JC, but they are so well connected, and, you know, those opportunities of experiential activities or experiences they're big. You know, we've talked about in our Peace and Conflict Studies program, taking community members on different excursions around the city and then even out of town. You know, what would that look like to do a civil rights excursion? What would it look like, you know, like our summer program that we're doing in Corrymeela? That is an experiential opportunity, and that we're coming at it through various perspectives, that of the Rotary, that of the San Antonio Peace Center, that of the community college, and you know, and then we're in the context of Northern Ireland. So you know, I just love thinking about it because there's so many opportunities and so many points of synergy.
You know, I would also be remiss if I didn't mention, because we have a lot of educators here that are actively trying to incorporate this into their classes and deliver this out to the students, that two things. We do have great partners throughout the city, some that I mentioned at the beginning, but many others, from Sister Martha Ann Kirk at Incarnate Word, Judith Norman at Trinity University. I mean, there's great resources in town for people that are academics, but also social activists who are committed to the type of experiential learning we're talking about. But also, I see a lot of service learning learning objective to that community service. And one of the things which has been active here in San Antonio, which people maybe outside of the circle don't realize, is that there's a connection between the colleges and universities, a long-standing collaboration that helps coordinate and support those service learning initiatives here in San Antonio that directly tackle a lot of the social issues and problems that we're talking about in terms of that touch upon peace and peace studies in San Antonio.
Andy, I agree. I was the sponsor of an LGBTQ club on campus for a while, and we had taken students to the AIDS Foundation, the San Antonio AIDS Foundation. And when the lady told us she needed volunteers with lunch, we thought that they meant like help serving or help preparing the lunch, but they have people that do that. What they needed help was feeding the patients that couldn't feed themselves. Mm-hmm. And so our students were taken aback at first because that's a pretty intense thing to do, but some of them really enjoyed it and came back on their own and volunteered to do that. It's such a simple thing, but they didn't have enough people to spoon feed people that needed to be fed. And I thought that was a really strong experience for our students, and I still help with them, you know, occasionally, and I know that they could use help, you know, if we decided to do something like what Julie was describing. You know, there's so many opportunities in San Antonio to do that with.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for that. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And put in the chat that 100% of the colleges and universities participated in our compassionate integrity training. And so that would be a great way to synergize and connect. So the one piece is very curriculum based, right? And then the other piece is that would be something to think about too, is taking this course together and then having an action project, you know, at the end of our course together. I like that. Dana, you mentioned the organization and I didn't get the name of it.
It was the San Antonio AIDS Foundation.
San Antonio AIDS Foundation.
Mm.
Thanks for that.
And Diane, you're right that those kind of experiences can really have a big impact on students. That can change their whole way of thinking about their community and their involvement in their service. And that's one of the high impact dimensions of classes that are thinking down these tracks and are trying to identify these issues and then finding systematic ways to respond and to coordinate that across the city.
And maybe even to think outside of that box a little bit. And a prime example, and it's coming out of UTSA, citywide, but the action is within cyber technology and community. So, any of those actions, compassion action involves every societal sector. Whatever you're looking at, if you're using that systemic approach, it crosses sectors. So a student could do a compassion action project on healthcare, but it could also do something on cybersecurity. A person could do, just whatever we're all interested in, it applies to. And that's what really gets exciting, is when you see this kind of cross-sector problematization and potential that I don't think we always think beyond, the human rights and human service, but we see great things in art and design when it comes to peacemaking. We see, just make the list.
Mm. I was going to say, I love Julie's idea of having a theme. About maybe 10 years ago, the Peace Center had 2 symposia, and one was on walls and the other one was on water. And they were really broad themes, and we invited everybody to come and do a seminar on how their field intersected, in one case with water and in the other one with walls. And we got some incredible presentations we never would have envisioned, very metaphorical, like architects talking about walls, theologians talking about walls, lawyers talking about walls. And the level of conversation we had in those 2 days was mind-boggling. And I can see having a big topic and inviting people to use their imaginations to bring whatever their skills, their knowledge, their abilities are to that topic could be incredibly powerful. If everybody
I like that idea.
The same thing. But it wasn't about a problem, it was about a bigger concept, and that invited everybody into it to figure out how they fit in.
I like that approach of having a thematic kind of invitation, like you said, that is intersectional, get people to think across all these different lines. And we've had success with that at St. Philip's College, where we were trying to talk about ethics across the whole institution, across the curriculum, and get people to think about it within their discipline, but also how that plays out in student affairs, with alumni, with all kinds of different ways. And there have been some really interesting and challenging moments as we've talked about, applying that theme, the ethics piece, in a sustained way. We did it for a 5-year period. But I do like the idea of saying, what does this look like if we had a 1-year approach and then reached out to people to try to bring them together around that concept? That's a good idea. Oh, and I see Derek Wilson has joined us. Hello, Derek, welcome. For our friends who don't know Derek, he's joining us from Northern Ireland, so welcome.
That's great. Y'all, we can open it up past, no walls holding us back on these topics. Those were questions really to just get our conversation going. Are there things that are on your heart or mind that you want to share about peace or the future of peace, and where you think that's going? Where should it go?
I have a couple of things I want to say about that, Meg.
Oh, please.
The first thing I want to say is that a lot of times the work that we do around peace and social justice, it gets relegated to woo-woo work, and soft skills, but it is really important work. It's the work of the heart, and that means courage. And it's desperately needed in our communities today. And so I would just want to champion that, I'll speak for myself. I adopt the idea that peace is not passive, and that I don't want to be diminished as somebody who's just kind of doing this side work. That's nice. It really is. It's really important to the health of our communities. And so I want to champion that. And the second thing I want to say is our students are hungry for it, and they really do care. I think it's easy to, as I get older to get into that, these kids today mentality, but interacting with students, I know that they really care. The topics they choose to write about in my class, the way they respond to questions about peace, conflict, and social justice, they care, and they want a better world. So I think that, we have everything that we need to do this work.
Yes, Julie, thank you for that. Anne.
And I want to just kind of ride that as well. It's not just students who are hungry for it. It's everybody. And we see that in all sorts of different intersections and gatherings that we have together. You can literally see people's bodies move in closer, right? So you see the body language as well as the energy level in people just reveal itself when you start talking about these things. And people are not only hungry for it, I would even say they're begging for it. It's like a necessity, and they don't know where to get it. Somebody too earlier, it might have been Julie's, somebody can remind me, but said something about being intentional. That is such a critical word in this work, to be intentional. And a lot of the work, because people do kind of collectively sidebar as a softer skill or something, you just mentioned that as well. We kind of work it that way, like, well, whatever we add to the world in terms of peace and compassion is more than what we had, right? And we're just going to do everything we can to make it happen. But, it's more than that. It's more real than anything I know. It's the thing that can help everything heal. And that's what everybody's so very hungry for, is healing. And even before that, the hope to heal underlines that as well. So in that intentional kind of practice and effort, and I don't think it was mentioned before I came in, a couple minutes late, just a couple, but so the Peace Center has for years, and I mean years, been thinking about, where does the Peace Center go? What's that like next level? How are we responsible to this work and have the ability to respond and carry it forward? And we've been close several times to kind of a next step, and but we're ready, and we're taking the next step. And so I think the question, where do we go? What should we be doing? One place we are going is that the 501c3 all volunteer Peace Center in San Antonio is transforming and transitioning into Alamo colleges, and specifically Northwest Vista College. And I mean, I see it even more than a partnership. That's why I said it transforming and transitioning. It's evolving and growing. And in that intentional move, it was just as intentional to be with community colleges. And I love the phrase of democratized education, because that's what peacemaking and compassion building, it has to be democratized. And if it's capitalized, it suddenly isn't that anymore. So I don't know how many people, I know some people on the screen are aware of that movement, but we are in that process of that transition, and very excited about it, because not only does it then reach into the students, provide a networking platform for educational institutions, but it also spreads that information out into the geography of the entire community. So yay, and lots of excitement. And thanks to many people who are on the screen who are working on that.
Hey, can I jump in here? This is Karen.
Please, Karen.
Thinking about your description of democratization and also the conversation we've been having about soft skills, I want to connect that up with the need for civic participation. And, you know, one of the things that are getting cut at college campuses is this idea of educating for a citizen to be engaged in their community. And it's something that we need a great deal of. Andy pointed out that, you know, polling numbers are indicating that, you know, people fear civil war because we can't communicate with one another, or we feel we can't communicate with one another. So maybe one of the peace roles of a peace center and a community college is educating our future citizens. I can't say that word, I'm sorry. For, you know, how do you have those difficult conversations? If you want to approach a lawmaker, what's the process for doing that? How do you do that? If you want to do petitions to change some type of local law or something like that, how's that done? With, you know, just educating the basics on this is how you communicate in a professional setting. This is how you communicate with persons that you might perceive have a different agenda than you do. So I throw that out as awesome.
Thank you, Karen. You were cutting out. We got the essence of the importance of what you're saying about civic participation. And Derek, I see that you wrote in the chat that you're supporting groups through wider civic participation. Do you want to say a bit about that? Nope. Okay. You know, y'all, some of these skills, you know, I don't like the dichotomy of hard and soft skills. It doesn't, you know, it's the binary, and I try to bunk the binaries. So I love essential skills. I think these skills that we've talked about today are essential skills, essential as, you know, I was talking about essential needs the other day. I think this is an essential need. Our ability to communicate with one another in intentional and compassionate ways, that to me is essential. So I don't like the hard soft skills, because I think without them, you can't be an effective leader in whatever industry you're in if you can't communicate. And you know, we know what that looks like. We've experienced leaders that don't have some of these essential skills, but are great, you know, you name it, software engineers are great, you know, so I think I'd like to start adopting the term essential, that these are essential skills. And I've gotten a lot of pushback, by the way, about that, but I would like to call them essential skills, these peacemaking skills, these compassion skills, renewal and wholeness work. It's essential to our community health and well-being. Anne, is your hand up, or was it up from the previous? Oh, no, that's okay. Yoel, any final thoughts?
I would just add that I think, and this is the exciting thing about San Antonio Peace Center moving to MVC, is how do we find, you know, getting institutional support to deepen relationships, to build programs, to have that synergy. And if our institutions aren't supporting us, that's hard to do because we're all busy. We have our regular work duties, we have family responsibilities. And so that's the exciting thing for me, is to say, wow, our institution, Alamo College's, the chancellor, is making this a priority. And so that's an exciting time to be able to say, now we have the time to really develop something together in a much more meaningful way, not just on the side after I'm done teaching or after you're done doing whatever you need to do. So that's what I'm excited about. And so building those relationships, building those connections and coming up with programs is going to be just super exciting to see where that goes in the next few years. But how do each of us go back to our institutions and continue to support, deepen ways our institutions can support people doing this meaningful work. And I'm encouraged by the hiring of Dr. Castillo, having a DEI office at Alamo Colleges, and the city making some of those things a priority of, I was looking at Kathleen and having this, your position of global, is it global initiatives? I don't remember.
I'm in the global engagement office. So we're
Right.
within the economic development department. Right now we're a staff of 5.
Okay. I mean, even that's progress, right? Like there's support there. So exciting. So that's what I wanted to add.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you for adding that, Neil. And I do think it's a huge step for all of us. I think it's a huge step for San Antonio. It's a huge step for our community college. And I want to thank all the people who have been so committed to this mission and vision, and have been engaged in the work for many years without support and without pay, and who have continued to provide opportunities for their students and for community members, because you care about the work, you're passionate, you're the change agents that we seek, right? Be the change, you are that change. And so I just wanted to thank you for being here today and conversing with us, and I'm sure we will continue this important conversation, and we'll be calling on you all to continue to engage with us and to really pick your brain about partnerships. So I want to turn it back over to Andy, who is pulling up the yes. Andy, you're muted.
Andy. You're muted, Andy.
There we go. Sorry about that. And now I'll see if I can back up to the. Of course. There we go. All right. I was just, again, putting in the plug for Sunday and the blessing of the Peacemakers, which has been an annual event where we name the Peace Laureates for the City of San Antonio, but also really celebrate the work that's been done throughout the course of the year by a lot of different folks, all working towards the same end, which is peace in our compassionate city. That's the goal. And again, it was nice today to see some faces that were on campus at Northwest Vista College 2 years ago when we started having these conversations about the work of the Peace Center in the community, that on the ground experience, and talking about how we could, like you were saying, Neil, create synergies, how we can bring that together with the academic programs in the city and hopefully really have a deeper, higher impact for the work that we've been doing. I can tell you, it's good to get together to see folks from across the city and to have Derek join us from across the waves. And I look forward to continuing to work with my colleagues within the Alamo colleges and throughout the city. That was pretty much all I wanted to say. Mig, did you want to add anything or invite any last comments from folks?
Yeah, I'll invite any last comments. I will say, Yale, that on Sunday, what was, I think, very poignant and powerful for me was on Friday. We engaged in a practice of the ritual that we will collectively do as a city on Sunday. And what was powerful about that is the ritual we're doing. One of them is by Thich Nhat Hanh. And the ritual we did by Thich Nhat Hanh, we did it together. We did it with intention. We did it with courage. And that is the same day that he died. So the connectivity across the world for peace education is fierce. So thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you all. And I'm going to stop the chat here, or stop the recording. Yeah.